And now it is time for Strange Stories with Shade, the part of the show where Shade comes out and tells a strange story. Our story begins with Shade standing before a roaring fireplace, hoping to tell his audience some of his most nostalgic tales. Greetings one and all, glad you can make it. He wishes to do a countdown on a topic outside of Bionicle, but is secretly afraid that his fans will go after him, as it is not the content they subscribe for. That was not in the script. And the last time he did that, it was awful, and thinking about it gives him PTSD. I do not like where this is going. But he still wants to try doing a topic on gaming, just like his countdown senpai, Thoughtful's minion. It's called being a fan, no more no less. Stop looking at me like that, I'm very straight. And its fans will also likely point out that it's snowing in his background, despite the fact it's no longer winter and he lives in Florida, where snow does not exist. Listen, are you here to do your job or poke fun at me? Well, you did tell me I can include some improvisation. Yeah, but improv does not mean create a roast. I found your script boring anyway. You realize I'm paying you for this, right? Well, you paid me in advance anyway, so I can say whatever I want and get away with it without losing my money. Why, you son of a— This has been Strange Stories with Shade. Tune in next time to hear Shade say, I am never hiring a narrator again. Gathered friends. Let's talk about memories. They practically form the story of our life. From when we were first born, to our time as a child, to this very moment, no matter your current age. And that story and those memories will continue until we are nothing but dust. But I think many of us can agree that some, if not many, of our closest and greatest memories came from our youth, back when we were younger and more innocent. And in the case for myself and millions of others, a lot of these memories came in the form of the coding and software we know as video games. I think it's always interesting to hear about the games we've played as children, as we all grew up during different points of the gaming industry's lifespan, not to mention our different backgrounds and preferences. Mine is most definitely different from yours. Regardless, I wanted to share my own memories with you, if you would be willing to spend the time. I would hope to be decent company. And in return, I would hope to hear some of your own memories, if you would wish to tell your own stories. I don't exactly have any rules for this list. These games just had to resonate with me back in my youth, and the more memories they gave me, the better. With all that said, let's turn the page and begin our tale. Well, I can't speak for everyone. I think many of us have had some sort of experience with licensed video games. I mean, I don't think we exactly knew of the poor reputation a lot of licensed games had. We just wanted to play the games that had our favorite characters. I mean, as a kid, would you rather play this strange game with a character and brand you likely have never heard of, or a game with a familiar face? I think most of us might know the answer to that question. I played several licensed games in my youth, mostly on my mom's PC or my Game Boy Micro. Some were alright, and some I wanted to burn to the ground before feeding the ashes to Godzilla, and then burn them again, and then feed them to Godzilla again. A Godzilla inside of a Godzilla. The heck am I writing? But several of them came from VeggieTales, a franchise that I still honestly love, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. Fiji Carnival and Minnesota Cuke and the Coconut Ape stick in my mind, but for the number 10 pick, we're gonna have to go camping. If I remember correctly, this was the very first of the VeggieTales PC games that I played, so I guess it would make sense why it stands out the most to me. It's probably the closest to a point-and-click adventure game I'll ever be. At least this one doesn't have BS puzzles like getting past this goat. Seriously, who thought that was a good idea again? If you ever played a humongous entertainment game, the mystery of Veggie Island might feel a little familiar to you. A kid-friendly adventure across a small world that involves slight puzzle elements. Although, as far as I can tell, there's not as much clicking on random crap here, but it does help in searching for optional silly campfire songs. There are also a few mini-games spread throughout, whether it's fishing for lost items, herding frogs towards a lily pad, or climbing a tree. I think one thing I really like about this game is the relaxing feel it has. Is it the guitar music? I think it's the guitar music. I mean, yeah, there is a conflict trying to find your way off the island after the Veggie's boat drifts away, but you never feel rushed to resolve the issue. You're always encouraged to explore, as nearly every screen has something to offer, especially when you are asked to search for pieces of a treasure map. Now, that's a pretty good incentive, and what little kid isn't up for a treasure hunt? Don't lie to yourself. And as small as the overall world was, there was still a nice diversity of locations, from a beach, to a forest, to a swamp, to a cave, and even a mansion. Said cave even has a pirate ship that you can explore in the later portions of the game. Now, I haven't played this game in years. Heck, I don't think I even have it anymore, so I can't say whether it's objectively a good game or not. Although I do remember the campfire songs with Larry being extremely laggy. Might have been my mom's computer though. I don't know, it's fairly old. The game is pretty short if you know what you're doing, and since it is a kid's game, difficulty basically called it quits. Regardless, whether it's really a masterpiece or a crusted piece of poo, I can still appreciate the many playthroughs and camping trips I had as a kid with my favorite talking Christian vegetables. Implying that there are others. The parodies don't count. And with no bugs biting me on these trips, that's always a good thing. This and one other entry are here for interesting reasons. I did play these games, but only briefly. Most of the memories from these are because of my younger sister, who you may know as Fanasty Finder, aka Fana, aka the artist for my avatar. She doesn't play video games often nowadays, but back when she was elementary and middle school, she loved them almost as much as I did. Our parents didn't let us play video games for that long back in the day, as they were afraid we would get addicted. So watching Fana play games was like getting extra game time myself, and provide memories I could get attached to as much as she did. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Regardless, does anyone here remember Webkinz? So, if that last entry didn't make you raise your brow, this most certainly will. It's not exactly the type of game one might expect me to wax poetic about. For those who don't know, Webkinz is an online game where kids could buy a stuffed animal and register it into the online world via an adoption center. That's actually adorable. And said plushie will become that child's virtual pet. Think Skylanders combined with Neopets, only with fluff instead of plastic. And there are a lot of Webkinz you can collect. Thankfully, as long as you have one, you get a year's worth of content in the game, so you don't have to worry about spending too much money. Unless you want that deluxe membership, that is. I remember back when my sister started playing the game, she started with a gray and white cat. Eventually she got a raccoon, which she ended up spending the most time with in-game, followed by a few others such as a Coco dinosaur and a tie-dyed frog. Now, taking care of these pets is only a small portion of the game. You could spend time decorating your house, giving your Webkinz stuff to play with, and feeding them. Or you could be like Fred and I and do practically everything else. Honestly, one thing I remember the most about the world is all the places we could go to and the NPCs we can interact with. From the curio shop where you can go into the mines and search for jewels, to the employment office where you can play simple yet fun mini games to earn some extra cash, the Kinsville Academy to increase your pet's skills and get some nice items, and of course, the arcade. There were many games you could play here, whether it be single player games against a computer or multiplayer games against other players. Heck, some of them even brought in the NPCs from across the game as judges. Now that's a detail I like, that just made the world feel more alive. Although some of these judges seem really picky with no real way to tell what will score well. Now, most of these games are pretty much clones of other games. I mean, there's no subtlety here, this is just Battleship with pirates. Regardless, we continue to return to these games time and time again, so we must have had some sort of fun. Now, when I decided to try the game for myself, I didn't find it quite as fun playing it on my own. I guess by that point, I experienced everything when watching Fana, or maybe I just enjoy watching her play rather than playing it myself. But I still have two of the Webkinz when I try the game, Cindy and Mira. So, while I didn't forge these memories by myself, there's still memories I hold dearly onto this day. And that's good enough for me. Thanks, sis. Since two of the previous entries were on the PC, some of you might be wondering if I ever played MMOs, a genre that pretty much made its home on desktop computers. And to that I have to say, yes. Sadly, I always did the free trials. Paying around $80 or so a year didn't exactly make myself or my parents comfortable, so I was kinda limited on what I could do on them. Doesn't mean I couldn't have fun with them though. Before we get to the nitty gritty of this spot's representative, I have a question for you. Are you tuned enough? Just as a heads up, I'm mostly using footage from the fan-made recreation, Toontown Rewritten. And to those who might complain about me not using as much footage from the original game, do you want the best footage I can download or not? I thought so. I remember seeing all the ads and commercials on TV while at my grandma's house, and eventually it did spark my curiosity to try it, especially as a fan of slapstick and cartoons. Heck, unless I'm mistaken, this is the first MMO I tried out. I remember wanting to make a monkey tune, until realizing I had to be a paying member, so I ended up creating a blue pig, Silly Lionel Funnyginx. I find it odd that I still remember his name. From there, it was nothing but fighting corporate robots, who, fun fact, are actually named after business terms, with the power of slapstick. You know, if I fought future wars with pies and squirty flowers, maybe they would be less stressful. Okay, so fighting the evil cogs wasn't the only thing you can do in this game, but it's certainly what I spent the most time on. I just really enjoy the combat, which plays like a simple turn-based RPG. Pick your weapon, pick your enemy, picture a watch to the face, explosion. I always strove to get better gags to use against these robotic cretins, and the constant stream of missions gave you an incentive to get stronger by taking down cogs, with some of them even building up to learning a new type of gag, like the area effect sound or the healing tune-up. But when I wasn't engaged in cartoon warfare, I was playing minigames to earn jelly beans to buy more gags to destroy more cogs. And honestly, these are a pretty good selection of minigames, all with a wide variety of themes and ideas. So it was a cycle for me. Minigames, buy gags, get missions, raise my eyebrow to somewhat poor graphics, this is apparently a woman, blow up cogs, get cool stuff. While it could get a tad repetitive, it never got so old where I wanted to quit, especially with the promise of good rewards. I actually remember trying to go to the other levels meant for stronger tunes, and even cog buildings, which were essentially enemy gauntlets, and failing at them. But in a way, it just added to my incentive to just grow stronger. And what did I get in the end? A message saying I couldn't get the last piece to unlock my new gag track unless I became a paid member. Essentially, screw you, we're Disney, we like money, pay up! This was soul crushing. All these hours to be blocked by a paywall. And again, since neither me or my parents wanted to pay, I was basically stuck with Silly Lionel Funnyginx in a cartoon limbo.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
No, too obvious.
Wake me up inside. I can't wake me up inside.
There we go. Much less obvious. But for as little time as Disney allowed me to play this game, thanks by the way, I still find myself remembering this game fondly. And ever since Toontown's cancellation in 2013, the fans have managed to recreate the game, so perhaps I'll put myself into Lionel's shoes once again. And World War II will begin again. Oh, we look at the time! Time for the next number segment. I'll just leave until the next number shows up. I take it that you've all calmed down?
You suck!
Fantastic! Now let's talk about the Game Boy Micro. Some may call it a pointless endeavor that didn't do well financially, or the system with that one ad— OH GOSH! Not on my channel! But I call it the first non-PC gaming system I personally ever owned. Although, technically, Fana owned it as well, so maybe personally isn't the right word. I still remember getting all those years ago on my 9th birthday. This was the time period where I personally considered myself starting to become a true gamer. I mean, yeah, the DS was out at the time and I wouldn't get until years later, but the Micro really expanded my horizons with what I could play. With memories of your first system, again, ignoring my mom's PC here, it's no surprise that a few spots on this list would be dedicated to this system's games. And here is one of them. Now this really brings me back. I believe it was the year of 2006. My family had gone out to eat earlier that night and we were at Toys R Us. Man, the script's gonna be dated in a few years. My parents said that Fana I could each choose one game to buy. I forget what Fana got, but I distinctly remember seeing this game on the store shelves. I played Super Mario Advance 1 beforehand, so I decided that it would be a good time to pick up the sequel. And since this was a port of what is considered to be one of Mario's greatest 2D outings, if not the greatest, I can safely say that this was a good decision. Strangely enough, one of my closest memories of this game is looking through the manual and map that came with the game. The map in particular, since it went over all the game's locations and even the enemies. I really love this! Going over all the details you need to know and fleshing out the world. I mean, the word world is in the title. It just made me more excited to play the game. Why don't games include manuals anymore? Because it costs money and the players could learn all this information in the game? Screw that! I need my cartoon pictures. But with this information in mind, I set forth on my journey through Dinosaur Island and never looked back, pushing forward through each new region, exploring all these locations, trying to wrap my brain around the various puzzles of both the ghost houses and the Forest of Illusion, and sucking at the game in general. Yeah, I wasn't very good at video games. Probably would have gotten a D on my gaming report card. I couldn't even figure out how to break the game with a cave feather. And that's just sad. I also was never able to beat the game as I couldn't figure out how to attack Bowser effectively. But at least I can finally do so years later with my new knowledge in mind. So satisfying. And can we just talk about Yoshi? Probably one of the best power-ups one can ever have. I always tried keeping him around as long as I could. At least until my suckage ruined it or I reached a ghost house or castle. Yeah, I never understood that either. Nor why this feature of bringing Yoshi to other levels was never carried over to the other 2D Mario platforms. Yeah, there's a lot to like about this game, and there is a reason why it's so beloved even after all these years. Not a personal favorite, but still one to keep close. It took me a good long while to become the gamer I am today. Back when I was young, I didn't have much options beyond my mom's PC and later the Game Boy Micro and DS. Heck, I didn't get my first console, the Wii, until I was in middle school. So, if I wanted console goodness, it usually came from going to my friends' or cousins' houses. Now, this was a rare occurrence, only happening a few times a year, but I think that made me appreciate those times so much more as a child. Playing at my cousin's house especially. Whenever my family traveled to Connecticut for a pre-Thanksgiving event, I could always look forward to playing some games with my extended family. Several GameCube and Wii games during those happy times come to mind, and this won't be the last time we revisit these moments. But I'm gonna have to give this spot to a very special brawl. So, I've been on the internet for over 6 years now. I know some things about the laws here. And apparently one of these laws of the internet says that Brawl is the weakest game in the Super Smash Bros. Series. And maybe it is? I don't know. But as a preteen, did I care? Nope. I was having too much fun knocking my opponents to Kingdom Come with some of my favorite characters. Yoshi, Wario, and Meta Knight come to mind in particular. I mean, to be fair, I do also have good memories of Melee, the quote-unquote best game of the series according to the internet, but I just spent more time with Brawl. And again, I didn't know the general consensus at the time. I wasn't as internet savvy as I am now, so in many ways, I can enjoy this game without that cloud judgment. I mean, it's Smash. I don't need to explain it. I know it, you know it, my mocks know it, Lord Cthulhu knows it. Grab some friends and or family, and you're bound to have a good time no matter what. Even Lord Cthulhu will have fun. I think. Not to mention, it's probably the closest I got to experience franchises like Kirby, Metroid, and Fire Emblem at the time, thanks to a roster made up of Nintendo's entire gaming history. And that's certainly the case with that story mode. I know the Subspace Emissary isn't perfect, looking at you, Great Maze, but it's the closest we've gotten to Nintendo's version of the Avengers, and it still pains me we didn't get something like that in Smash 4. Mario Party Light just isn't as fun, sorry Sakurai. While I didn't play this mode until years later, Fan and I watched our cousin Jill play it, and we loved every second of it. Just seeing all these characters come together to fight this mysterious, imposing threats. Even as we left to go back to Maryland, I still wanted to know what was going to happen next. I was legit interested in the storyline and had to look the cutscenes up online to get the full story. All these good memories culminated in me buying the game for myself years later once my family finally owned a Wii. And while I didn't exactly have a lot of people constantly around me who wanted to play Brawl, I still retain those good times since I finally took on the Emissary for myself. And then got annoyed at Taboo's boss fight. Not as much frustration with the Great Maze, because I had printed out a map ahead of time after I heard about its infamy. No regrets. Again, this most likely isn't the best Smash game. Nowadays I'd rather pick up Smash 4, but despite the flowiness, despite the random tripping, despite the Great Maze, that won't stop me remembering those fun times with the family. Remember back in the number 9 segment, I brought up there was one other game on this list I earned memories from just by watching Fana play them? Yeah, this is our stop. My sister did truly find games and franchises I would have never been interested in or heard of otherwise, but I guess that's what happens when the two of you are the opposite gender. Different tastes are likely to come up. And the game she played that stuck out the most and stuck with me the most was a little game called Harvest Moon Sunshine Islands. interesting looking back on these obscure gems. It seems like most of us have experienced a few in our lifetime, and this game in particular, based on what I've read and watched online, is not the most recognized nor beloved of the Harvest Moon games. Heck, apparently the NPCs are ripped straight from the previous game, Island of Happiness. Not sure who needs to be fired here. But since Fan and I didn't know all this information at the time, we could just enjoy Sunshine Islands for what it was, and what we got was a pretty satisfying package with a lot to do. Of course, like any Harvest Moon game, there's farming and taking care of animals, llama just granted. But there's also mining for jewels and minerals, fishing, hoarding nearly everything you get your grubby dirty hands on, even little rocks and sticks, participating in annual competitions and events, and of course, talking to the charming townsfolk. I think that aspect is what I remember the most about this game. I don't know how much was copied from their Island of Happiness counterparts, but I still remember many of these residents, from the mentor like Taro, to the gruff but friendly Ganon, on that one I thought the same thing, to the shy Sabrina, to the strange witch princess, to the tribal Shia, and of course, the man Fana tried to woo, the friendly fisherman Denny. I still remember her talking to him every in-game day, giving him gifts of fish, hoping to win his love. And as the in-game months and years passed by, the two forged a closer and closer bond, until the two finally wed. This was a momentous moment for my sister, a task that took a long time to finally reach. Just like a real relationship, it was at this point when my sister was truly happy. And then about a month later, she turned the game off while saving and lost all of her save data. Well, that was anticlimactic and depressing. And then she tried again with a friendly rich boy named Will. She lost the data even sooner. Yeah, our time with Sunshine Islands didn't end happily, especially since we never reached the main goal of raising all the tidal islands by collecting all the sunstones. But I don't think that should hurt the good times we had. Fana put a lot of investment into this game, and while there were several bumps and hurdles, there was always something to look forward to, whether it be expanding the farm, discovering sunstones, or forging closer bonds with the residents. I honestly wouldn't mind giving this game another spin. I would love to go through these memories again, and spending time with some lovely waifu material wouldn't hurt either. Oh, better stop talking before I look like a perverted creep. Next number. So, anyone here heard of Mega Man? Mega Man! I'll take that as a yes. When most people recall their nostalgic memories of the Blue Bomber and company, it's usually with the classic NX series. Not me. Battle Network all the way. While I did see an ad for Battle Network 4 in an old Disney Adventures magazine, man, I sure do like dating my script, don't I? And one for Battle Network 6 in Boys Life, my true introduction was via the NT Warrior manga. I don't even consider myself a manga fan, and I love the stories, the characters, and the battles across all 13 volumes. This series is nearly as nostalgic to me as the games on this list. So one day my mother and Fana noticed a certain used game at GameStop. So naturally, as fans of the manga, we decided to try the game out. With all that said, jack in, Mega Man, execute! This is a weird game for me, admittedly. I remember having a lot of good times going through Battle Network 3, but also a lot of frustrating moments. I enjoyed the strange and epic story, all the characters I love from the manga, even if some of them like Flashman and Bubbleman have different allegiances, and the battle system, using hundreds of different chips to attack multiple viruses, was a lot of fun. But holy heck, could it be difficult! I struggle a lot in this game, more often than not with the bosses. They hit hard, usually moved around pretty quickly, and had their own strategies and gimmicks to get around, such as Flame Man's candles and King Man's chess pieces. That, coupled with me once again being fairly incompetent playing video games, especially in regards to proper chip folder customization, I came to roadblocks multiple times. But I suppose you remember these experiences, these trials, these challenges. Fana and I, usually myself, thanks for that sis, had to work hard to get past these roadblocks. Learning patterns, building a proper strategy, and striking at the right moments. Each time we lost, it just motivated us to keep trying. And once we watched these bosses' health drop to 0 and see them explode as they were deleted, so gratifying! You know how being a difficult boss in a Dark Souls game is supposed to feel satisfying that you conquered this difficult challenge? That's how I felt as a preteen when playing this game. Okay, maybe not all of them were as difficult as I'm making them out to be, but still. And yes, I did unironically make a Dark Souls comparison. Bite me. I probably deserve that. I suppose it helps that I wanted to see what was going to happen next. Even though the story follows a mostly episodic Saturday morning cartoon nature, I was still engaged. I want to conclude the story, see what happened to these characters. Sadly, I was never able to finish the game, with the 2 consecutive final bosses trying even my patience. I was getting somewhat tired at this point and hadn't touched the game since. At least not until writing the script. Now that I'm older and slightly better at video games, I think I got a C last time on my report card, I had a much easier time going through this game. It does feel rather satisfying to return to this game years later and finally finish and put it to rest. And if a game convinces you to return back years later based upon your own personal feelings, I think that really does say something. You may have noticed during the introduction that I never brought up the 1 per franchise rule many content creators use in these countdowns. That's because, well, we're talking about Mario again, and I kinda grew up with him. Ever since I started playing console and handheld games, Mario's plump face is one I could always trust for a good time. And since a lot of his games are so nostalgic to me, and nostalgia is the name of the game for this type of list, it would feel a bit dishonest to limit his enormous library to just 1 spot on his list. I mean, look at it. It's enough to fill 2 Grand Canyons. Maybe 3. And I sure as heck ain't gonna ignore his parties. I can't include just one of Hudson Soft's last 2 games in this sub-series in this list. I just can't. Both Mario Party 8 and DS strum the nostalgia chords too hard for me. I hope you understand. I always enjoyed the franchise since I was young and played the 4th, 6th, and 7th outings, but it was these 2 I spent the most time with. In the red corner is Mario Party 8. I was first introduced to this entry once again at my cousin's house during a pre-Thanksgiving event, and since I enjoyed what I played of the other games, I loved the chance to play this and loved nearly every minute of it. Every turn on the board, every event, every minigame, every star earned. Now, since our time at our cousin's house is usually limited, we would have only played once before going back home. But during that time, tragedy did strike my family in the form of my great uncle's death. May he rest in peace. We had to stay a few extra days for the funeral, so during that time, once every afternoon while we were there, we played more Mario Party 8. Not only did it allow me to enjoy the game more, but in a way, it lightly helped some of us cope with the tragedy. It was nice to know that we could find solace and come together as a family to enjoy a grand old time, despite these negative feelings. And in the end, isn't that what multiplayer games are supposed to do? Bring people together? And in the blue corner is Mario Party DS, the swan song of Hudson Soft's run before the dark age of the series, and my first DS game. I remember my shock and surprise on Christmas Day opening one of my gifts, revealing the DS and a game from a sub-series my parents knew I loved. I played this game for over a month. Granted, my parents only allowed me to play for 20 minutes a day, and it was the only DS game I had at the time, but I didn't care. I was an extremely happy camper, knowing I finally owned a game in one of my favorite series. Before I had to rely on going to a friend or my cousin's house, which wasn't often, but now the shackles were broken. I think the one thing I love about this game is that nearly everything stuck with the main theme, in this case our heroes being the size of a pea. There are a few outliers that don't match the theme quite as well, or at least it's hard to tell, but the boards and most of the minigames do reflect this. I don't think I've seen this much dedication to a theme in a Mario Party game since 6 with its day and night system. So now, I ask myself, why the heck did I sell this game? I had so much fun with this. Oh, did I lose interest after playing for a while? I could have kept it to myself in case I wanted to play it again in the future. I mean, GameStop gave me jack crap after I sold it, so I barely had anything to lose after I kept it. Screw you past me! Sorry. Regardless of my past stupidity, I still hold these 2 dear to my heart. There might be better games in the series overall, heck, 8 is considered to be one of the weaker entries, but they helped me love a franchise I already enjoyed even more. My early years of gaming were mostly on my mom's PC. My late elementary and preteen years were mostly on my own handheld systems. But outside of family and friends, there was a gap between those 2. Arguably the most important of my gaming life. My cousins decided to give my grandma their old Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games. She lived closer to my nuclear family, so while I'm not completely sure what their thought process was, they must have thought Fan and I would want to play them. And we did. While we could only play them at Grandma's house, still not sure why exactly, it was my gateway towards other forms of gaming. Stuff like this before could only happen a few times a year, but now I had opportunities to play some of these great games almost every Tuesday night. I spent more time on the GBA, as the games my cousins lent for that system I enjoyed more, and one of those games became one of my all-time favorites. Gentlemen,
Okie dokie, let's go!
The floodgates of nostalgia have now been broken, and the memories are flowing out in droves. Superstar Saga was by far the GBA game I sunk the most time into whenever I was at Grandma's house, and why shouldn't it be? It had 2 Italian plumbers I loved, a crazy plot with equally crazy villains, silliness abound, a quirky soundtrack, and an RPG system that ranks amongst my favorites. Similar to Battle Network 3, there were many trials I faced trying to reach the end, and finishing this game was truly an adventure, not unlike what the bros had to go through. Constantly losing the Toll Star, not realizing that there was a save block next to him, again going back to being horrendous at games, finally overcoming him after months of trial and error, taking the long climb up Hoo Hoo Mountain to get the materials needed to make the hammers, and carrying the freaky corrupted form of Cream Bean, healing her and seeing that she was still a bit freaky, more so in her official art, holy crap! Constantly getting my butt handed to me at Woo Hoo Hoo University, losing my mind at Teehee Valley, first constantly losing Peach and then not being able to beat Trunkel before buying a guide, seeing Bowser get a sex change, finding the pieces of Beanstar, or during the Yoshi to Yoshi's Theater, taking out Bowser's Castle, constantly restarting the game because I kept getting stuck and wanted to try again, become better at the game, finally being a Saga after all these years, and so much more. Yeah, to say this wasn't a journey for me would be a massive understatement. So when I did finally reach the end, it felt satisfying to finish this long quest. Ever since then, I played through the game multiple times and had a much easier time through it, but that will never be my first run. Okay, maybe not my first since I did restart several times, but you know what I mean! I love this game. I think I made that very clear. And while there is a shiny new remake on the 3DS, I don't have any desire to buy it. I still have my copy of the GBA original, and it plays just as well as it did all those years ago. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Now before we get to number 1, I'd like to include a few honorable mentions. So for our final tale, the one closest to my heart, let us travel back to the 4th grade. My class was holding a field trip and I had to bring an adult to be my chaperone. For this one, my grandma had decided to come along. It was a nice trip, and after we came back to school, Grandma was going to drive me home. And then in her car, she gave me a surprise. My older cousins had decided to give their old Game Boy to her and she wanted me to try it. Along with the system were several games, but one stuck out in particular. One with a red plastic coating and an orange dragon I had seen before on the front sticker. And from that moment, a legend was born. Remember that important gap I mentioned a few minutes ago? This was the catalyst. This is what made me love games as much as I do today. I might have seen clips of the Pokemon anime and watched people play parts of the games, but I had always yearned to play the games and enjoy the franchise for myself. And here was my opportunity. So I went forth, starting the game and choosing Charmander. Unfortunately, I didn't get far into the game, but my grandmother told me I could play these games whenever I went to her house, and I took that to heart. While my first few times with the game I didn't understand how to save or even progress properly through the game, only getting as far as Viridian Forest, I still pushed forward, trying all the stars and catching all the Pokemon I could find. And when I finally learned how to do these things, my adventure could finally begin. With Charmander by my side, I went through the region of Kanto, taking on every challenge that came my way to become the very best like no one ever was. Many times I asked my friends and cousins who had experience with the game prior, advice on what to do and how to progress. I wanted to know everything. Since I didn't seem to understand proper team balancing, despite having 5 other Pokemon on my team, I ended up battling the most with Charmander, who eventually evolved into a Charizard, and by the time I faced Mewtwo, he was over level 80. While foolish of me to mostly only train this one Pokemon, in a way, I managed to grow an extremely close bond with a single pocket monster. And while nowadays I understand he's not the best Pokemon, Charizard still remains a nostalgic favorite of mine. And while this doesn't have to do with a game, Pokemon Red did get me interested in trying nearly every piece of Pokemon media, from the movies to the books to the anime to the other games, all of which I indulged to the nth degree. To say I wasn't a bit of a fanboy at the time would be lying. And while all these times kept this game a nostalgic wonder, there was one other piece that cements this game as one of my most cherished memories. As mentioned, I was awful at games at the time. I couldn't really get far in most of them. But when I finally faced Blue, the new champion of Kanto, finally besting him after numerous losses, defeating his Blastoise with my Charizard, and becoming a champion, that moment, that single moment, became one of my favorites in my short gaming life, and it still does to this day. Like Superstar Saga, finishing Pokemon Red was a long, arduous journey that spanned many months. This was the first time I had actually finished a game outside of a few simple educational preschool games. I felt a sense of accomplishment, satisfaction. That was me. That was me in the Hall of Fame alongside one of my greatest gaming companions. While I have finished many games since then, never has finishing them reached the same level of satisfaction and joy as this moment. This is why I hold Pokemon Red so close to my heart, despite the fact that newer generations were out of the time. While I would be willing to give up the game itself to play the much improved GBA remakes, I will never give up the memories I had with the original. They are too close to my heart to ever abandon. Hold on to your memories, my friends. They are an important aspect that define you. I'm Shay2800, and before I go, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to my friends who let me play their games when my own library was limited. Thank you to my cousins for giving me their games when they no longer wanted them. Thank you to my parents who let me indulge in this gaming hobby and buying my first gaming systems. Thank you to my sister for forging many of these memories along my side. And most importantly, despite her now living in heaven, thank you to my grandmother, God bless her soul, to introducing me to some of my greatest gaming memories. Without you all, I wouldn't be the man and the gamer I am today. From the bottom of my heart, Godspeed to all of you.